don't blame God for stupid things that people do. Like, okay,
Like people are going to let you down.
if a Christian does a stupid thing, people will walk away from their faith because of it. And it's like, what does that have to do with God? Like, this person made a bad choice.
The other day you said something to me like, I probably shouldn't be a Christian anymore, or like,
Right.
I don't remember what the phrase was. Maybe you remember or you've said it before, but like you had some rough church interactions over your life. And we both have friends that have walked away from their faith because of things like that.
Right.
You didn't.
Right.
What did you learn, or what did you do that has kept you going in your faith?
Right. It's such a great topic. And first answer is I don't know. I think it's grace in my life. I think it's God's grace in my life. And, I know that a lot of the kids that grew up in similar church situations to me, or the same one, like people from my church back home, like
Literally.
like didn't end up walking with God. And I think there is some level sometimes, whether it's bad theology or just, I don't know, things can get weird and sort of disconnected from who God actually is. I mean, we were talking about, you were saying, I don't think, a mutual friend of ours was like, do they still love Jesus? And I
think the term was, well, do they still love Jesus, bro?
Do you even love Jesus, bro?
Do you even love Jesus, bro?
But the question is, well, what is actually loving Jesus, and who did they love? If that love went away so quickly, was the connection actually with Jesus, or was it just with a culture? Mm-hmm. Because when you become at odds with a Christian culture, church culture, whatever it is, could be online, it could be a pastor who fails in some way. If that's your connection, is only to the theology or the
environment,
or churchianity, as the Bible Project guy calls it, churchianity. If that's your only connection, then I don't think it will make it through. And that's where finding, I remember in college, God spoke to me, and this is more to answer your question, is that it was just like, don't blame God for stupid things that people do. Like, okay,
like people are going to let you down.
If a Christian does a stupid thing, people will walk away from their faith because of it. And it's like, what does that have to do with God? Like, this person made a bad choice. And that's, in essence, taking the Lord's name in vain. Because it means don't carry the name of God, that commandment. It's not about swearing. It's about don't say, yeah, I'm a follower, and then carry that name in a way that doesn't reflect God. And so, God's saying don't do that, and then someone does, and then you blame God.
Right.
It makes sense on one level. I'm not hating on that. I get it. I feel the pain of that.
Yes.
And it's easy
because of people you trust that have betrayed you.
Yes. So I get that it's a very difficult situation, but for whatever reason, I had the grace, particularly in college, to just look at it and be like, yeah, I don't love a lot of things that Christian people are doing, but I know that doesn't negate the God that I know, Jesus that I know, the love that I know that I found. It doesn't negate that. And I just was able to hold on to that for whatever reason.
So, disconnecting God from people are not God.
Right.
People are going to let us down.
Right.
I'm going to let people down. You're going to let people down, and not holding our, like, this is Jesus, and if they let me down, Jesus has let me down.
Right.
Is not the perspective to take. And so some of that, and we talked about this the other day as well, people are holding on to this unforgiveness or this resentment. And you said something like, this is the whole culture. Like, people are holding on to this, to these wounds or hurts, and it's wrecking them. And that's natural life for many people.
Yes.
So how do you not get resentful, or how do you forgive? Or how do you let stuff go?
Yes. Well,
Like, I got other things to think about.
Well,
Not to oversimplify, because people have legitimate and serious wounds.
yes. Right. Absolutely. And that's where just focusing on me and not worrying, not judging other people helps. But I have the benefit of having worked a 12-step program. And step 4 is you go through and you write down every single resentment you can think of from age 1 to age 5, from age 5 to age 10, from age 10 to age 15, 20.
Wow.
For your whole life. You write down everybody you ever met, everywhere you went to school, everywhere you went to church, every coach, every girlfriend, every person that bullied you. You write down every resentment, and then you go through them one by one and pick them apart and say, okay, how did this affect my pride? How did this affect my self-esteem? You do it with a mentor. Don't attempt it alone.
On your own.
Yes. How did this affect my sexuality? How did this affect my relationships, my money, my ambitions? And then you start looking at your own mistakes within that. So,
like, to own your part of the deal? Is that the
right
motive of this exercise?
Well,
this sounds like a fascinating thing. I've never heard of this before. So
it's I don't know that I could simplify it that quickly, that fast, because I wouldn't have wrapped my head completely around this. But the basic idea is, number one, that you need to face those things that are hurting you. I mean, I've heard Jordan Peterson say, like, that it's like a dragon that hoards gold. It's like the Hobbit. Like, the thing where you don't want to look most in your life is where the treasure is. It's like Bilbo. Like, you don't want to go on that dragon, but that's where the money is. And so usually if you're like, I don't want to look at my finances, like, that's exactly where you need to look. Or I don't want to sit down with a counselor about marriage. Like, that's probably what you should do. So, but within resentments, resentments have a lot of information within them, because ultimately, according to the theology or the lore, the mythology of the 12 steps, there is no justified resentment there.
Wow.
At all, ever. So if you're resentful, it doesn't mean that it wasn't wrong.
Right.
If something bad happens, there's a correct way to respond to it. But usually when you respond correctly to something, you do not resent it. And it's getting to the point with everything in your life. For me, it was, I had 93 pages that I wrote. And it's getting to the point where you have no resentments anymore. Because that's what's fueling addiction, is usually your incorrect perception of life. This guy did this, and then this guy did that. And if it hadn't been for the government and this church, that pastor, if it hadn't been for this business deal, that business deal was 30 years ago, And so in cases of, like, severe offenses done to you, the mistake you might be making could be one that you've built a personality around. It's like, oh, this bad thing happened to me when I was a child, right? That's horrible. That's terrible that happened. But you built this false personality over it, and you're still living out like you're 5 years old and you're in this situation. You're not in this situation anymore. And you've built this whole personality. You've made a mistake that you're still experiencing that pain now. You're not in that situation anymore. And so your mistake could just be that you haven't let it go.
So you talk about, like, people holding on to something that happened long ago. This business deal went bad. We make these excuses about why we aren't where we want to be, maybe. And we talked about this the other day too, is, okay, you have a bad deal with a record label or something. They take your song. You said, you write another song. You write another song.
Right.
Because you can't keep making these excuses if you want to keep creating and keep bringing your gift to the world.
Yes.
You're hurting the world, or you're hurting yourself by blaming the thing that happened and letting it stop you dead.
Yes.
Versus continuing, you keep walking, you keep running, you keep writing songs, you keep writing your blog posts, you keep writing whatever, you keep designing furniture, whatever it is, without letting this one incident hold you back. So why is it important to press on and keep going and keep writing songs after a bad situation? You get stolen.
Which never happened to me, luckily.
Okay.
But I mean, I think as Joyce Meyer said, you can either be powerful or you can be pitied, but you cannot be both at the same time. And that's exactly what we're talking about. You can either, if you're saying, oh, this thing happened to me and that's why I'm not moving forward. Okay, sure, we could pity you, but you're not powerful in that moment. I mean, people who have done great things, every single one of them failed their way to success. Winston Churchill, what is it? Success is going from failure to failure without a loss of enthusiasm.
Yeah, you said that the other day.
And
you're pulling out the quotes, Dave. We got Joyce Meyer in here. We got Winston Churchill.
I think it's just having that mentality that if you do what's right and you take care of your own business, eventually, if you offer proper sacrifices, like that will be acceptable eventually. But you just have to be consistent and persistent enough to finally, get luck on your side, if you will.
Luck because of persistence.
Yes. Well, people will have overnight success all the time, and it's never overnight success. It's like Henry Ford went broke like 3 times before his actual V8 engine came through. And so it's like, oh, he's an overnight success. No, he's been failing his way to the top for the last 25 years.
I heard maybe it was Winston Churchill too. It may have been Ford, but the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Exactly. Yes.
Like it's not going to drop in your lap if you're not creating and producing. Maybe someone will win the lottery, but
that's
long term, well. That's not going to help you win the marathon.
Right.
Maybe the sprint, but not the marathon. Hey, thanks for joining us today. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, like it, share, review, do all the things you're supposed to do. We really appreciate it. We want to keep making great content and learning from our mistakes, getting wisdom. Thanks so much. See you next time.